Buenas tardes, clase. Today we're going to be talking about possessive adjectives. And I noticed that in our essays or in paragraphs over the weekend that we did a really great job with normal adjectives, but possessive adjectives is something that we need to work on. So what are possessive adjectives? In English, we're talking about saying my, your, his or her, our, their, and y'all's, which I know does not exist in the Spanish or in the English language rather, but it's basically saying your guys's or your to a group of people. We're saying your homework this weekend was really good, talking to a class. These go before nouns, just like our articles do. So you'd say things like my book or your recipe, his kitchen, our family, things that go before our nouns to show possession or ownership. So let's talk about how to say these in Spanish. One thing that we need to keep in mind is that Spanish is OCD and everything has to match. This is not anything new for us, and it continues in this grammar point as well. So there's actually two different ways to say it, mi or mis. Your, there's two different ways to say it, tu or tus. And the most important thing you need to know about tu or tus is that it does not have an accent mark. Otherwise, it would mean just you. And we're trying to say your. So your does not have any accent marks. Actually, none of these do, which I'm sure some of you will be happy to hear. His, her, or your in a formal way, maybe speaking politely, is su or sus. Our, there's actually four different ways to say it. Nuestro, nuestra, nuestros, and nuestras. And I'd be willing to bet you guys can guess when we are going to use each of these. And then finally, their and that funky y'all's is su or sus. No, this is not an error. These are the same. Su and sus, su and sus. We'll get to the difference between them in just a moment. So if I had the word book, and then I had the word books, and I wanted to talk about books that were mine, I would simply say in English, my book. And in English, we wouldn't say my's books, even though this is plural, this should be as well. English is not an OCD language. Spanish, however, is. If one thing is singular, everything has to be singular. If one thing is plural, everything has to be plural. So let's take that same example in Spanish. We have a libro. I need to find an adjective that matches that. So I'm going to say mi. Versus libros, I am going to say mis because libros is plural. So, and same thing with other possessive adjective. If I was trying to say your book, I would say tu libro. If I wanted to say your books, I would make it plural because everything has to match. It's an OCD language. So now for our, we have to be very specific as to when we use these. As we have learned with articles and adjectives, things need to match masculine, feminine, singular, plural. So if I was trying to say our dad, maybe my brothers and I were talking about our dad, we would say nuestro. Because padre is singular and masculine, so is nuestro. We know that because it ends in an O. For madre, if I was trying to say our mom, I bet you could guess it is singular and feminine. And so we would say nuestra. It is singular and feminine, demonstrated by the A here. If I was saying our grandpas or grandparents, we would need an adjective that's masculine and plural, demonstrated by the os here. Same thing for abuelas, nuestras. Notice the four different ways to say our. Again, I can't emphasize this enough. Spanish is OCD and everything has to match. So for instance, when we're trying to figure out which adjective we need, we start with the noun. That's the most important part. Once we figure out if the noun is singular or plural, we have to figure out, okay, is our adjective going to be singular or plural? So it's going to be me because it's just one mom that you're talking about. Here we have parents, so we would say padres. If we wanted to say your, our two options or tu or tus, we're going to choose the plural one because we have plural padres. Singular noun, singular adjective, plural noun, plural adjective. Now this is where it gets a little tricky. Because su and su are the same, they're going to seem a little tricky. So again, we always start with the noun. Here we have kitchen, which is cocina. We have two options for his, su or sus. Because it's one kitchen, we're going to choose su. Now let's do the same thing. You would think with their, because there is plural, talking about a group of people, you would use sus. But if you start with the noun and work your way back, you're going to realize that it doesn't matter. So we have cocina, it is singular, and we have to go, is cocina singular or plural? It's singular, so it's su, not sus. Now you're probably going, well, how do we know the difference between his, her, their, and y'all's? Right? Because we have su cocina and su cocina. If I'm reading or speaking or listening, how am I going to know the difference? But hopefully you would understand that we don't just throw in a su or su. We wouldn't just say his kitchen or their kitchen without first identifying who we're talking about. I wouldn't just say his kitchen is really clean, because the first thing you would say is, well, whose kitchen are you talking about? So you really don't use su or sus unless you know the subject of the sentence. If I said their homework was the best, you would probably go, well, whose homework? Period 2, period 5, period 6, whose homework is the best? So we don't use su or me or mis or any of them until we've established our subjects. And just keep in mind, the biggest thing to take away from this is that the subjects don't matter. It doesn't matter if it's his or hers or theirs. What matters are the nouns that we're talking about. Is it one kitchen or a lot of kitchens? Is it one homework or many assignments that we're talking about? That determines whether we use su or sus, not the owner. So now that we have a little bit better idea about su or sus, try these on your own. Hopefully you would have gotten that it is sus sillas because chairs is plural, and hopefully you would have gotten that it's su pavo because turkey is singular. If you didn't get those answers, let me know in this play pause it, and I will go over them with you to make sure you get this concept. Now go ahead and do this practice. Hopefully this will go really quickly for you. If you have questions, make sure to email me or message me on Google Classroom. Buena suerte.